Good evening and welcome to tonight's Knowledge Drop, brought to you by Burning Groove and Tjoon in association with Music in Africa Live's capacity building grant, as well as the German Federal Foreign Office's Siemens Stiftung and Goethe-Institut. Finn McKinnon and Presh Ramadeen from Tjoon this evening. They're going to tell you when Tjoon was born and what they're all about and what's going down tonight. Hello, Finn. Hi, Presh.
Hi, Kerry. Hello, hello.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for letting me be a part of something so special. Tell us about how Tjoon started and what Tjoon actually is.
Cool. Well, thank you for being part of this, first of all. Tjoon is, well, actually, this is meant to be you. You do what Tjoon is.
Cool. So Tjoon is a digital application that is looking to use technology and data to leverage and enable the creative and music. So fundamentally what it's about is how do we give value to the artists using technology? And what we're starting with is the music industry in South Africa.
Yeah.
So if you look at what's happening globally, there's a movement of as that force multiplier for previously underserved markets. Now, if you look at the organizations that are going digital and using digital transformation, they are accelerating their growth. So it's our opinion that music and creative industries are one of those previously underserved markets.
Absolutely.
So with Tjoon, what we're doing fundamentally that's different is that everything we do in design and build has the artist at the epicenter. It's all about the artist. The artist is the customer. And that's really, from a technology perspective, how we're starting out and building everything. So what we're doing is we're looking to level the playing field for artists globally, starting local, but the vision is going global. And Tjoon will do things like enable the artists to manage their copyrights and licensing. It'll enable them to connect to the resources they need. For example, I'm a new musician. Not myself personally, I'm saying if you're a new musician,
yeah.
How do I manage my royalties? How do I manage my licensing? Where do I find the resources to accelerate my growth as an artist? So, Tjoon is looking to solve those problems, and it's looking to fundamentally look at three value providers. It's about the insights from data. It's about education, which is what we're focusing on today. And it's about digitalization. And ultimately, it's about stimulating the creative economy, but also getting artists paid. So what we want to do is...
Thank you.
we want to use tech to help get artists paid, fundamentally. And so we are building a seamless digital experience that is data-driven, but also considering the high level of what is artists' needs. They have a broad number of needs. But also, listen, we combining our passions here. It's creative art, it's music, it's data, and what Tjoon is really is a beautiful collaboration between creative, music, and technology.
And it's such an important marriage, and I find so many creatives aren't aware of where to find the information, how to get things copyrighted, what any of these big terms mean. And I feel like there isn't an app like the one you've created with all of this information. It's just there for people to use. Of course, the music industry at large. That Presh from Fox & Miller, as well as Tjoon, just created with Finn, and Finn is from Burning Groove. Finn, you called me a little while ago and you threw out all of these crazy ideas, which I just thought was so phenomenal. Tell me about how you got involved with Tjoon and everything that you're bringing to South Africa and eventually to the world.
Okay, well, so I'm from a company called together created Tjoon. They've got amazing tech capabilities, and we work in the music industry. And so what we realize in the music industry is that there's a lot of, obviously South Africa has a lot of struggling artists, but a fundamental reason for why that is because artists lack sort of the knowledge of how the industries technically work. For example, copyrights. How do you register your copyrights? And even if you can register them, where do you get your money from? And how do you get that money? And so it's almost like there's a lot of knowledge in the music industries about gear and cool pedals and nice guitars and stuff, but there's not a lot of knowledge about the business. like the side that kind of makes the music economies turn around. And so if you don't know, then it's very hard to be able to do something about it. So we were playing around for a long time trying to find a solution. And then we met Priyash a number of years ago, and we started chatting. And so it's kind of been years in the making, plotting this thing. And eventually it got to a point where we were able to do it. And so, yeah, I think he covered it quite well, that we're really trying to make a positive impact. So with what we're doing tonight and where we're starting is with copyright. So it's all good if we can help people manage their copyrights, but no one can do stuff for you. It's still up to you to look for someone to use your music or to license it here or license it there. And so understanding what you're doing as well as being able to do it is really quite important.
It really, really is. Thank you so much, Finn. We'll chat more to the guys in just a bit. If you have any questions regarding what a copyright is, the music industry from a publishing point of view, or the recording industries, then drop us a line on this stream and we'll answer your questions for us. Some very special guests in studio from Sampra as well as from Ditto Music. All the brains in the biz after this next educational video, brought to you, of course, by Tjoon.
Hello everybody, and welcome to our quick and dirty introduction to copyright in music, brought to you by Tjoon. In this episode number 1, we are going to cover copyright in music 101, what they are and who owns them. In the Copyright Act, the only copyright that is recognized is copyright. When people talk about master rights, performance rights and such, they are simply referring to a particular manner of exploiting the copyright. But the music industry has developed to see them as separate rights and define them in such a way in their contracts and in their agreements. So always make sure you get a keen eye to check your agreements to understand what your particular rights and obligations are. What follows in these videos is a generalized version of the industry. What is music? Is it a song? Is it words and melodies? An idea? Could be, but what about CDs or MP3s? Some might say it's an experience, impossible to hold or touch, nothing more than a memory as soon as it ends. So much more. Whether we like it or not, music's very existence requires a business element. Live performances, streaming, listening to any recording at all, and even free concerts. Money has to change hands for equipment, facilities, electricity, internet, and everything in between. In addition to all of the material costs, there is also the human power, a massive decentralized army of skilled and creative people working as one to ensure the world can enjoy the experience of music. If we want to experience music as we know it, easy to access, global and magical, the human power needs to be paid. Everyone from the workers at a factory that makes speakers through to an artist arranging notes and putting them to words, to a business person marketing and selling recorded music or concert tickets. It's all part of the music business. At the heart of this business sits the central music industry, which generates revenue from musical notes and sells the experience of music. How do you sell experience, though? Selling or licensing the use of a copyright. So what is a copyright? The word copyright literally refers to the right to copy. This implies that the owner of a copyright has a set of rights that allows them to decide what to do with it and how it's to be used. A copyright is an asset, exactly like a car or a house. It can be used, rented, or sold, except because we refer to it as an intangible asset, but it's an asset nonetheless. In the music industries, these copyrights are linked to music, melodies and words that are intellectual property, and the recording of intellectual property. So, whatever form that music takes, whether it's a stadium concert or elevator music, the copyright's existence relies on simply publishing the music in some way. But this could lead to and sometimes even conflict. So the addition of metadata aids in clarifying information about the copyright, who made it, who owns it, how it's used or licensed, and how to pay the people involved. So while copyright is essential to the business of music, the metadata allows the business to happen. The music industry we all talk about consists of actually two music industries who rely and interact with each other, the publishing industry and the recording industry. The publishing industry is made up of publishing companies who are responsible for making music public. Publishing literally means to make public, generally well known. The recording industry is responsible for recording and distributing recorded music and is made up of record companies and record labels. Fun fact, the word label actually comes from the circular labels that are in the center of vinyl discs, displaying the rights holders' credits and the name of the record label. We'll go into more detail about them in episode 2, but for now, what you need to know is that they are technically different industries and that traditionally they trade in different aspects of the music industry. There are usually two stakeholders that are able to own a share or the whole of a copyright: the creative stakeholder and the business stakeholder. Between the two of them, they are usually responsible for creating and monetizing the copyright. Each industry usually deals with different forms of copyright that are separate yet related. The publishing industry works with copyrights associated with intellectual property in musical work, such as the melody or the words. These are referred to as publishing rights. The recording industry works with copyrights associated with the recorded version of a musical work, known as the sound recordings or the recorded works. These are usually referred to as either master rights or neighboring rights. Both referring to the same rights, the master comes from the word master tapes, or the final version recording that will be released. The word neighboring comes from the fact that rights are next to publishing rights, i.e. their neighbor. We will use the term neighboring rights as that is the term that South Africans tend to use the most. Strictly speaking, the law itself does not distinguish between these types of copyright, but it does. We'll deal with it in industry speak, but elaborate more on this study guide. A musical work is a song or a piece of music which, as mentioned before, has a copyright associated with it and is protected by that copyright. In South Africa and most countries in the world, as soon as the musical work is created and published, whether the songwriter writes it down or documents it in any way, like a cell phone recording, if it meets the requirements of copyright law, it is automatically copyrighted, and the songwriter is usually the owner. A recorded work is a recording of that musical work. When the musical work is recorded, a whole new copyright is created. It is usually owned by the artist who performed on that recording, though it could be owned by whoever paid for the recording to be made, or a label. These are neighboring rights. The term artists refers to people who perform music, either on a recording or in a live performance. Depending on what they do, they can be called either performing artists or recording artists. The rights holders can be either people or organizations, and they can either create the copyright or monetize them from a business point of view. In the publishing industry, the songwriters get credits for each role that they played in writing the work, such as composing, authoring, or adapting. We'll refer to this creative credit as the songwriter's share. The publishing companies acquire a share of the publishing rights by either buying them or having them licensed to them. This business share is referred to as the publisher's share. In the recording industry, the recording artist receives creative credits for each role they played in recording work, such as artists, featured artists, and non-featured artists. The record label acquires a share of the neighboring rights either by paying for the recordings, buying them, or licensing them. This business share is called the label's share. So you might be thinking, this is all good and well, but I can release music without a record label or a publishing industry. Why do I need to know all of this if I can do it all myself? Good point, but that's exactly it. If you are a self-published, self-recorded, self-released artist that writes and performs your own music, you are the songwriter, publisher, artist, and record label all rolled into one. This means that you own all of the copyright associated with your music, and that means you get to keep all of the royalties. And there you have it, folks. Music is a deep and powerful artistic medium, a selection of notes and words that can delight and enthrall, but it is also a complex set of laws, business intricacies, and information that allows the industry to keep the world. In episode 2, we'll be looking at the publishing and recording companies in more detail to understand what agreements and deals are made of and what rights are being traded. Thanks for watching. We'll tune you later.
I'm Carrie, and this is an educational knowledge drop brought to you by Burning Groove, Tjoon, as well as the Goethe-Institut, the German Federal Foreign Office, Siemens Stiftung, as well as Music in Africa's Lives Capacity Building Grant. It's very exciting time Tjoon, and something so absolutely necessary. We're joined by two brains in the biz, the very wonderful Wendy Becca from Ditto Music. She is the Africa Regional Manager. She's also an A&R genius. And we have Stuart Hope from Sampra, another massive brain in the biz. If you have any questions regarding copyright or if you'd like to share tonight, and again, to Burning Groove, Fox and Miller, as well as Tjoon for bringing this all to you tonight. Don't forget, we'll be back with you tomorrow night for more installments. So if you have any questions, don't forget to join us. But drop us a question now if you have anything regarding copyright. What is a copyright? Thank you so much again, Finn, for being here and making all of this possible. Welcome to the show, Stuart. Great to have you here. Wendy, always great seeing you. Thanks for being here and for sharing your knowledge with us tonight. We're talking about copyright. What is a copyright? It's owning, is it selling, is it distributing your material? Explain to us a bit about what it is and what it involves. And we have a question already in from one of the viewers. Thank you so much, Seb. Your answer coming up. And but first, if we could summarize for those out there, what is a copyright in terms of music in South Africa?
Will be broken up between what is managed by a publisher and what is managed by the label, if the artist is assigned to one, or by the manager or the artist themselves. Broadly speaking, what's contained in the publishing portion of the copyright is the composer as well as the songwriter rights, and then in the master, which falls under the label, is the music work. I'm not sure if you want to expand on that, or you can.
I think from a South African law point of view, well, the word copyright is the right to copy. So any work that is protected by a copyright affords the owner, in this case, most often the creator, so the author, or the composer you talked about, the right to use that work, to exploit it for financial gain. So that could be using it in print or in a recording or putting it on a CD or whether they want to use their copy.
Absolutely. Doing a cover version of it, making an original, getting the song played in the series that you watch on TV or in a movie that's coming out or in a TV advert.
And the great thing is that depending on the type of copyright, you have a different agency to look after that copyright for you. So you have multiple revenue streams for your potential work, which is quite nice in our context.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, Capasso's out there, and so publishers have them to go to when you're looking at licensing your material. There's Samro, and that kind of deals more with radio and TV, but so many different avenues and different rather organizations that deal with all of the million different parts of the music industry and how to publish, how to release, how to copyright. And talking about advertising and TV, Wendy, you just had to kind of touched on that. Seb sent in a message saying, I have a TV show interested in using one of my bands to them for the song. What pitfalls should I watch out for in such a deal?
But I think if the TV show is asking for mechanical rights, the first thing that he needs to ask himself is who owns the song? Did they write the song themselves? Is the music original? And then they obviously performed it as the band. There are 3 rights that are then involved. And then in order to have sign off on something for usage, there are usually 2 parties that sign off on that. It's whoever's administrating the master rights. So it sounds like Seb manages his own band, so that would be Seb. And then whoever does the publishing. It might also be Seb in that case. And if it's 100% original, then it turns out that Seb is in the position to grant those rights.
And would you suggest he do that for a local TV show? Is it a good idea?
I think something like that is probably best on. Unfortunately, you didn't tell us the name of his band.
I know the name of his band.
Indie Dog.
Yes, Seb is from Indie Dog. And they're a great new band. They've been around a couple of years and doing great things. So yay that someone's interested, because you've usually got to have a sync agent.
Opportunity for them.
Yes, okay.
Absolutely. So if they feel great about this and it's a great opportunity for them, they should absolutely go for it. And then what they would want to do is then negotiate with the TV program to either pay them a fee for usage, or otherwise get them to get the TV show to provide marketing support to that value, which might be an opportunity for their TV program then, if they didn't have the kind of budget that SETSBAN would require. And then releasing mechanical rights for the show to, on which station is the show? Because that would also...
Let us know which station.
That would also-
If you can. But for those watching, what are mechanical rights?
Mechanical rights would be the rights, the license you pay to make a mechanical copy of the thing. Now, in the 21st century, mechanical copies any time that particular thing is reproduced. So old school and new school, it would be like an LP reproduction, CD, streaming. They all count towards mechanical rights. It's just the right to make a copy, literally.
So I think in this case, if it's for TV, then it would be mechanical rights from the publishing side and an enable or master right from the recording side, because it would actually be a sync deal.
If they're playing here as part of the program, then it would not be a sync, because then it's not occurring more than once. If they're playing it as part of an insert that goes onto TV, then that would require mechanical rights. Right. So usually what we have is that corporations like DSTV or MultiChoice, and then as a company, they would pay what's called blanket rights to be able to access a catalog of copyrighted material for a blanket fee for all of their programs that are created in-house for their own channels. And that makes being able to source music and play quality music on air a lot simpler, a lot easier than having to negotiate those kinds of rights on a case-by-case basis.
Would that apply if the song is used in an episode of a TV show? Then it wouldn't be synced, or that wouldn't be synced.
If it's a locally produced TV show that is owned by, let's say, owned by DSTV, then that would cover that, yes.
Okay.
If it's a piece of music that's going to be used in the opener of a show and will therefore be shown again and again and again, or used in the credits, then that would be a different fee.
Okay. I'm learning things.
And so is Seb. Seb, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. He can't say much more right now, but good luck with that, and what great news that is. Thank you so much for answering Seb's question. If you are watching this, share this with friends and family that are in the music industry, that are looking for answers, and obviously check out Tjoon on all social media platforms. So we're joined by Finn from Burning Groove, as well as Tjoon, Wendy, who runs the regional management position for Africa for Ditto Music, and of course we're joined by Stuart Hope from Sampra, and also doing very big things at the University of Cape Town as far as piracy goes and the digital music space. So really, we have all of the answers you're looking for right here. Send them to us on the stream. We're talking about copyright, and after this, we'll be going to an educational video whereafter we're going to be talking about publishing as well as record labels. So to talk more about copyright, we've chatted a bit about that, but where do you go? Where do you go to get your music copywritten or registered?
Well, in terms of standard publishing, as soon as the thing is published, it typically has a copyright.
Yeah.
However, if you want to, let's take, for example, Finn's in a band, which he is, or multiple bands, and they record a track, and they want to get a ISRC code, which is something that you will see in the materials. In South Africa, they would go to an organization like RISA, and then RISA would deal with the international parties so that your track has got an international code. So there's a code attached to the track, attached to the work, so wherever it's played all over the world, it's one particular work. That's where you would go, for example, to do that side of it.
Or SAMRA or any of these organizations. So RISA is the place to go place to contact. But of course, just Google is your friend. Google how to get your music registered, and you definitely do need that code so that your music can go international. And if it does, that you still own it, which is so important.
I think there's like one of the understandings or one of the things that people miss a lot is that owning a copyright is quite easy. It's quite easy to create a copyright. You just publish something, put it on the internet, or write it down, and technically it's published. So technically you then own the copyright. But it's registering and being able to use that copyright that's the tricky part.
Yes.
So Stuart mentioned Reza. There's also Sampra, Samro, Capasso, and a whole host of other smaller ones that they will register copyright with international organizations, and they'll then be able to track when that copyright is used. And so that's where the money comes in. It's when you can get the music used or the copyright used and get those agencies to pick up on the use. That's how you get your money. And so, having the copyright is one thing, but getting the money back for it is sort of the tricky part.
Yes, exactly. Because another thing I think a lot of artists out there don't realize is that they can get paid every time their song gets played on the radio, and every time their song gets used for various platforms, and then they need, I guess, a sync agent. And this is where it becomes really important to have your music registered and to have that code. And often a radio station won't play your music unless you submit it with a code. So it really is important to reach out to one of these organizations, Sampra, Samro, Risa, Capasso, to get your music published. But we'll talk more about publishing, how that all works, as well as record labels and the record industries, after a very important educational knowledge drop coming at you very, very soon. Don't forget to drop those questions to us, and thank you so much for joining us.
It makes the most sense to begin with the publishing industry because they deal with the intellectual property involved in a musical work, which is essential to make a recorded work. When a song is used, even if the publishing rights holder did not make the recording, they are entitled to a portion of the money that gets generated from the use of the intellectual property. For example, when Goldfish recorded their cover of Nirvana's Heart-Shaped Box, they needed to secure the permission and rights to do that. With those rights, however, they then created a new additional copyright on their version. Usually, a deal will be struck between the original artist and the cover artist to share revenue, but that is dependent on the agreement between them. That may sound confusing, but it's fairly straightforward. Recorded. Permission in the license needs to be obtained from the owner, in this case, Nirvana, or the label that owns their music. A license is when the rights holder gives another person or party permission to use their copyright, either to perform on stage, adapt, or make a recording of it. It is like renting or leasing the copyright, just like an asset. So let's have a look at the publishing industry. As we know, publishing refers to making something public or generally known. You will know the word from the literary industry. In fact, music publishing was based on book publishing when it was first created. In music's case, it used to involve the printing of sheet music and making it available to orchestras to perform and to the public to buy and recreate at home on the family piano. The main difference between the literary industry and music print medium to a written song, but essentially in the music, whether it is in a recorded medium, a printable medium, written down, or documented in some way. Sure that copyright holders are exposed to opportunities to be paid for the use of their copyright, whether they're performed, recorded, or licensed. In order to license the use or sale of copyright, a publishing company must get them from somewhere. This can be done by buying, involves acquiring the rights from songwriters. As the rights holder of a publishing right, the songwriter owns the commodity that the publisher wants to make use of to make money. This is commonly referred to as exploiting the music or commercializing it. This interaction is where publishing deals come in. Publishing deals are an agreement between the publishing rights holders, like songwriters, and publishing companies. The publisher then licenses compositions to users such as record labels, recording artists, TV and film producers, and the like, and then monitors where compositions are used. In the case of most sync deals, a publisher will also negotiate on behalf of the songwriters to secure the best deals possible. They also perform essential admin to ensure all licensing happens properly and that all of the royalties get to the right people. Some of that admin includes registering the publishing copyrights with relevant collective management organizations, or CMOs, ensuring that all of the relevant metadata is correct and up to date, bookkeeping services, and collecting royalties from users or licensees and distributing them to their clients. Now let's go deeper into publishing deals. Publishing deals can take on many shapes and forms, and each one is usually unique in some way or another. In each case, the basic transaction is the same. The publisher will perform a range of administration and business tasks mentioned before on behalf of the songwriter. In return, the publisher is entitled to a share of the royalties and revenue that's generated usually. While each deal will vary on the exact conditions, such as the percentage split, the tasks to be undertaken, inclusion of an advance, or the term or amount of time that the deal is valid for, they are all designed to do the same thing, and that is generate and administrate revenue from the copyright. Like any contract, publishing deals should be considered very carefully and thoroughly, and should be negotiated so that the songwriter gets the best deal possible. Under most publishing deals, the songwriter and the publishing company share claims to the copyright. This is through licensing, revenue, equality agreements. Less often, co-ownership, though this comes with its own issues. You can consider it like this. Rights equal royalties. Whomever owns the copyright should get the royalty unless there's an agreement to the contrary. And there are a lot of those. As we learned in Chapter 1, songwriters refer to the individual creative people who wrote the song. Each individual is credited with the roles that they performed in the writing of the song, such as the composer who wrote the music and the author who wrote the lyrics. There can be multiple individuals performing each role, and there is no need for every role to be filled. For example, a song could have 3 composers and 2 authors, or just 1 composer and nothing else. When a song is written, the songwriters should decide who owns each part. This is recorded on a split sheet, where each person is credited with their roles and their percentage ownership of the copyright. Should being the operative word, as it's often neglected, leaving the writers to duke it out in some form of tribunal when a dispute eventually arises. You may have heard people referring to credits on a song or an album. These splits and roles are what they're talking about. Now let's look at the recording industry. If we use the same analogy of the literary industry from earlier on, we know that recorded works are in fact just another medium that can hold the same ideas and intellectual property that is in a musical work. Just like an audiobook contains the same story as the printed version, but it's definitely not a book. We know that the record industry relies on publishing right holders, like songwriters, to create musical works that can be recorded. In fact, their business model is fairly similar to that of the publishing industry, except they exist to sell or license the use of recorded works, not musical works. A record label's main job is to ensure that artists and neighboring rights holders are correctly compensated for the use and sale of their works. This involves signing recording deals with neighboring rights holders, like recording artists, who assign the rights to the record label with permission to exploit them. In most cases, the record label will pay a recording budget for the recording sessions to claim ownership of them. The label then proceeds to license the use of the recordings and sell them in various formats such as digital downloads, CDs, and vinyls to music fans. This involves a lot of promotion, which the label normally pays for, as well as packaging the recordings into each format and distributing them to the point of sale where fans can access them. It could be done by the publisher too, agreements. Lastly, they perform the same admin tasks as publishing companies to ensure that all licensing happens properly and that all of the royalties get to the right people. Who are these creative people, the artists? Recording artists are creative rights holders of the recording industry, and they are musical artists that play musical instruments and sing on recordings and in live performances. Some are also songwriters, meaning they exist in the publishing industry too. Just like songwriters, they are credited with roles that they perform in the creation of the recording. Notably, these roles are featured artist, non-featured artist, or other featured artist. The feature artist is the main artist, whose name the word artists are guest recording artists credited within the song title. For example, song title featuring other featured artists. Just like publishing credits, each role can be filled with multiple individuals. For example, if a band records a song together, they all qualify for a featured artist credit. Recording deals follow the deals, where each party performs certain roles in the pursuit of creating, licensing, and selling recorded music. There are many types of record deals. Some stipulate that the record label owns everything that the artist produces, including their image and name, which entitles them to a large percentage of all of the revenue that the artist makes. Clearly distinct from one another, they are also fairly similar in their labels act a bit like a bank in providing the budget to create and record the works and promote the recordings. In many cases, by a financial loan known as an advance. As a result, the company typically requires something in return, and that can be anything from a stake in the music to a right to the royalties. The advances or loans can be seen as crucial to many artists or songwriters. It affords them the time to give up their day job and work on their music, and provides the budget to record and make promotional content. They should, however, always be treated as what they are, credit which creates debt. Aside from financial support, many artists find the publishers or labels' additional services to be very helpful. They have big networks that make it easy to connect with skilled people, and they have dedicated professionals to assist the artists with their careers. Lastly, internet. It is by far the most exciting ever. In the history of time, been so much music being made is available instantly online. Songwriters and artists are able to bypass the publishers and labels altogether, and as a result, the industries are changing rapidly. The future looks bright. In episode 3, we'll look at what aspects exist in publishing and neighboring rights. We'll also look at royalties and find out who gets them. Thanks for watching. We'll tune you later.
Okay, audio's on, camera's up.
Thanks again for joining us. It is another knowledge drop. Don't forget to follow everything that this dashing gentleman is doing with Presh from Fox and Miller. They've created something called Tjoon. Tjoon app. It brings you so much knowledge and literally covers almost any kind of corner of the music industry you're wanting to learn more of. We're chatting about publishing and record labels up next. So I'm going to hand over to the lovely Wendy. She runs for Ditto Music and one of those brains in the biz. So Wendy, please tell us about what your role entails as a regional manager for Africa for a label.
So basically, at Ditto Music, we work with independent artists across Africa and across the world. We have different people who head up different regions, just like I head up Africa as a region. And we work with artists from various levels of popularity. We have two business sectors. A subscription model, which is completely DIY for your artist that is either starting out recording their first song in their bedroom and wants to release it. We supply them with ISRC codes and they organize their own gigs. They do everything themselves. We get their songs distributed onto places like Apple Music, Spotify, as well as the local stores, such as Jukes and streaming platforms. Then on the label services side, we also work with artists and labels that are much more popular and are, for all intents and purposes, your really successful independent artists. In the last 10 years, we've seen the rise of the independent artists owning their own rights, their own copyright, whether it is their own publishing rights or their own master recording rights. And we work with those artists and managers and labels to kind of get their career to the next level. I suppose in anyone's career, there comes a stage where where the workload exceeds what a team is able to do. And rather than signing to a major or a smaller label, we're there to help the artists with all things such as pitching to playlists on Apple and Spotify and Deezer and across the world, and assisting with things like strategy and rollout plan, all the traditional role that a record company would usually perform, the independent artist is now able to do for themselves.
That's phenomenal. I can't actually believe that you're able to get the artist to fill out a form and then boom, they get a code. That's phenomenal, because Stuart is saying it isn't that difficult, but for so many people out there, it seems very daunting if you're not in the know really. And there isn't, I mean, there's a book here and there, but there isn't a place you can go to type out that question. Yes, you can go to Google and you can go, which publishers should I get in touch with, or who's Googling which record label, you know, and we all know all the big ones, but who knows that they can contact Wendy and her people at Ditto Music, and you can register your song as easily as filling out a form. Or if you're one of the bigger guys and you'd like your music played around the world and you need that kind of platform to get it on all the social media and digital platforms, then you need to contact yourself. So with a record label, how does one do that? Is it as easy as phoning and dropping an email, or do they need to put a whole EPK together? What are you looking for, and who kind of catches your attention?
Well, I think the industry has changed a lot. I mean, it's always evolving, right? Back in the day, bands used to get discovered by A&R scouts, who would then sign to a record label or a major. We refer to the majors as being the big record companies. These days, you know, there's not really a lot of development that takes place at labels. Usually an A&R person would then develop an act like that at a label over many years until they've got a product that's absolutely crafted, and then put that out into the world as a release. These days, it's a lot faster. We've moved from an album economy to a single economy, and most record companies won't sign you as a band or an artist unless you already have your own fan base, a following, a buzz, community that's happening around you as an artist. To be fair, I think it's probably there's a large volume of artists out there. It's never been easier to make, produce, record your own music and get it out into the world. So it's probably a good idea to hang on to your own copyright as possible, and to gain a significant following, to find your voice and to grow your fan base around you before you want to start negotiating those rights away, because that's inevitably what a label will do. It's become cheaper to record and produce and put out material yourself, and that was chiefly the cost that record companies would look after in the past. But now you can do that yourself.
Which kind of puts more power into the artist's hands. And now with this kind of platform where you really have somewhere to reach out and get all the information you need, you can really just do an entire album during lockdown at home in your bedroom, and you can release it. And with the right social media and the right friends around you, your kind of comms are endless, really. Thank you so much. You've really kind of answered that question incredibly well. But of course, Regional Africa Manager of Ditto Music. And now Stuart Hope joining us, doing big things at UCT and at SAMPRA. So tell us what you do there, because you, of course, are involved in getting royalties and distribution to the artists, but so much more than that, because you're on the tech side of things. So please explain to us, from your point of view, about publishing, record labels, and how you've got to go about getting your stuff out there.
Well, in the context of what we do at SAMPRA is we chiefly look after the performers and record companies.
Yep.
Without going, I think we'll go into more detail on this tomorrow night as to who, where, what, and how. We literally just look after, let's say, the performers, make sure they get their money. We license, we get the revenue, we make sure that the money gets to the right people and at the right time, and that the record companies, the traditional record companies that you refer to, get their slice of the pie, as well as the performers. Yeah, that's in a nutshell what we kind of do. From a technical perspective, there's millions of lines of data we process for every distribution, yeah, we give us a shot. We'll make sure you get the correct money.
Cool. So Stuart Hope from SAMPRA will help you get your money. And thanks again for joining us tonight. We are still involved in this conversation. If you have any questions, drop them to us on this live stream. Please don't forget, you could benefit from this. We've got some questions in, and thank you so much for them. Rolof, who enforces the copyright laws? How can one ensure that you get what is owed to you, especially if you act independently?
Well, copyright laws, if you look at RISA has copyright enforcement, and they have a department which looks after that. So one classic example is jukeboxes. You know, those jukeboxes, old school, they're still around. There is an enforcement agent that does raids. They interact with the SAPS and they do the raids. So when it comes to copyright enforcement, RISA will look after that. When it comes to looking after radios, or shall we say restaurants, an organization like SAMRA or SAMPRA, they have agents that go to restaurants, they go to shopping malls, and they literally go from store to store and check who this shop, and then what happens is you follow up and see if they are licensed. So it is enforced. There's an enforcement process, as you know how many thousands of shops there are out there. It does happen. Okay,
and does everyone have the right to play Boney M during Christmas?
One should play Boney M during Christmas.
Okay.
See your local record shop to see if you get yourself a second-hand copy. There are out there. You can play whatever you like. The key thing is keep track of what you're playing, because your playlist, it's important that you, as let's say an independent a restaurant, if you give your playlist to the bodies, and they can pay the appropriate people. So if you, for example, play Boney M, but you say you play Mariah Carey, Mariah Carey will get paid. So playlists are very, very important. So you have the rights, but please keep track of it so that the agencies can actually pay the appropriate part.
Of course. Thank you for that, Stuart, and thank you so much for your question, Rudolph. Susan, thank you so much for your question. Susan saying, pros and cons of going independent versus trying to get a record label. What do record labels look for, Wendy?
Record labels look for artists that already have a fully formed audience. It's highly unlikely that they will sign artists that don't already have a following, aren't really filling shows, don't already have a significant amount of people that are streaming their music and getting their music into charts on Apple Music and Spotify, etc. So developing artists, I'm afraid to say you probably don't stand much chance of signing to a record company. The other aspect to consider is the fact that as those masters, unless you sign a joint venture of some sort, but then we start getting into maybe that's for the next session. But 9 times out of 10, what happens is when you sign to a record company, they will take care of the cost of the recording and the production of your album, and in lieu of that, you will be giving them ownership of your master copyright. And
then you get big, and then you go, done it!
Exactly, because the thing is that the more popular you are as an artist who retains ownership of your master copyright, the stronger bargaining position you are, or negotiating position you are in to get a higher amount of money when you do sell those masters, or if you ever sell those masters. Because, the thing is that owning your own copyright ensures future income. You own the right to derive an income from that ownership. In essence, what you're doing is you're swapping, it's like taking out a bank loan. You're swapping your rights for a lot of money, but then a lot of costs can get added. The bank can add a lot of costs, and then at the end of the day, you might find that you still don't own the house. So, at the same time, it's not always. There are good stories and there are bad stories about artists signing to record companies. So, I don't really want to say it's a good or a bad thing, but I'd say that the balance of power has never been more flat. And certainly in this day and age, managers have a lot of power in the industry. And if you are an artist who's been looking after their own career or your own band's career, I think that as your career grows or as your popularity grows, it might be more prudent to take on a manager rather than seeking out a deal with a record company, because you find that most of the time artists that are going outright looking for a record company don't really know what the right questions are. They don't know why they want a record company. I'd rather figure out what the questions are.
Excellent. And that's why Tjoon has been born. Thank you so much, Wendy, and thank you so much for that question. Another question, Lisa asking, do you think the current lack of knowledge around copyrights in South Africa is a specific or is it found around the world?
I think that's an interesting question. I think it's definitely in more developed countries, but I think quite similar to, if you will, the global south. I think that because the copyright collection systems are a bit more developed overseas, that it's easier to understand them and easier to work with them. And I think the knowledge is therefore in the industry more. Yeah. You chat to someone at a bar, they can actually know. Also, our collection society over the last 20 years. So because the landscape's changed, it's also not that easy to get reliable information.
Yeah.
That much information on South Africa specifically. And what's important is that every country has their own copyright laws. And the music industry worldwide has developed systems to get around the difference in laws. So while copyrights are treated differently in every country, there are ways to use music in different countries or to license music in different countries. And so I think that sort of specific connection to South Africa is not very prevalent at all. There is one his YouTube channel called Skill Music SA, and he is really good at blogging and stuff about South Africa and copyright and that sort of stuff. So
fantastic.
He's a good guy to check out if you are trying to. Well, Tjoon app is our website, tjoon.app. And yeah, you'll find a bunch of stuff there. We launched today, actually.
Happy launch day!
Thank you. Yeah, it was a bit more chaotic than I anticipated. But yeah, you check out the website. There's a decent about section, and we'll be updating it quite a lot over the next few months. So if you are interested, watch your mailbox and keep an eye on that.
Excellent stuff. I got a question in, and that from GM. How regularly are royalties paid? GM, thank you so much for reaching out. Tomorrow night we'll be back with another live stream, and we'll be dealing more with royalties and music rights. And we'll have some phenomenal guests in studio again, answering all of your questions. Please don't forget to share the streams. And if you have any questions, you can drop them to us there. So royalties and music rights happening tomorrow night And if you missed anything, don't forget to go to tjoon.app, that's TJOON.app, for all the information and questions that you have. We are about to say goodbye to you now. So again, Finn, congratulations and a very happy launch day to you and to your partner Presh at Tjoon. What a well-needed...
There's a big team behind the two of us.
Yes, please, give them a shout out now.
Right on. So it's from our side, it's Gert and Brendan and Richard from Burning Groove. And from Fox and Miller's side, it is obviously Priyash, Jürgen, Shazia, Freya, and Marco. And yeah, so there's 9 of us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, a big shout out to Tjoon, to Fox Miller, and of course to Burning Groove. A huge shout out to you, Wendy. Any last comments? Any last little piece of advice you'd like to share with us?
I think try to stay true to yourself in the music that you want to create. There's so much music out there, and people, you know, you can enjoy yourself while you're finding your voice. If you want to get serious, then people know when you're following a trend. Find your voice, find your music, and do that.
Thank you, Wendy. Stuart Hope.
I would say if you sign on with a record company, read your contracts. Read your contracts. Decide whether you want to, what you want to give away and what you want to retain. Always ask advice.
Yeah. Always get that second opinion. Always go through those contracts. It's so very important. Tomorrow, royalties and music rights. A big shout out to Ulrich, to John, and to Carl. Thank you so much to everyone behind the scenes for being here. Thank you so much for backing the music industry, and thank you for your questions. It's been awesome having all of these phenomenal guests. Well done again to you, Finn, and your crews. A big shout out to Music in Africa, to the Goethe-Institut, as well as the Siemens Stiftung, and of course to you. Without your support and for the support of the music industry, none of this would even be important. So thanks again for watching. Please share, please drop us your questions, and we'll be back with you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. I'm Carrie Ann. Have a wonderful evening. Keep on rocking, keep on spreading the beautiful music and the love. Thank you, guys. Excellent. Thank you. Bye.